Hello and welcome back to The Walk and Talk, the podcast where we take a stroll together, sometimes literally, sometimes figuratively, and dive deep into the world of dog training, behaviour and connection. My name's Lisa and I'm a multi-award-winning dog training and behaviour expert, and today I want to talk about something that actually on the surface might not sound flashy or glamorous. Well, it's not might not, it definitely doesn't. It's not that exciting at all, and it doesn't look flashy even if you achieve it to a really high standard with your dog. But it is actually one of the most life-changing skills that you can teach your dog, and that is settle training. Now, when I say settle, I don't just mean your dog laying down on command. That's not a settle, that's a down. That's really easy to teach. It was pretty easy to teach. I mean your dog genuinely being able to relax, to let go, to stop scanning the environment, to stop anticipating the next thing, and to just chill and be at peace. Because ultimately, settle training is not about teaching your dog to just put their body in a certain position and stay there, right? It's really about teaching our dogs how to find calm in a world that, let's be honest, is often noisy, unpredictable, and is chock full of stimulation for our dogs all the time. And when you think about it like that, that's actually a pretty profound skill. And I think it seems a bit bonkers that we just pop a lead on our dog and we take them to the pub, or we go to the cafe, or we tether them up on the campsite, and then we just expect them to have that skill without putting any work into it whatsoever. So let's kick off with why settle training matters. Okay, so imagine you've taken your dog out to a cafe. The sun is shining, it's a glorious day, you've got coffee in your hand, and you're meeting your friend there, and you would love to just sit and chat with your bestie. Of course, you would. Now, imagine your dog is beside you, and they are low key whining and pacing, and then they keep stopping and pawing at you, and they are barking at everybody who walks past the table. That's not exactly relaxing, is it? But on the flip side, if your dog, instead of doing all of that, can just come along with you and curl up under the table, and then they just give this big old sigh and they lay down and they just doze off whilst you're sitting there sipping your latte, living your best life. In comparison to the first scenario, certainly that's an absolute game changer, right? Now, I know some of you might just say, well, for God's sake, if your dog can't handle a cafe or they can't handle a beer garden, don't take them to the cafe, don't take them to the pub, just let them chill out at home, right? Totally fine. But there are some cases in our lives in which we simply can't just leave our dogs at home. So think about the vet's waiting room as a great example. Now, for a lot of dogs, that's a stressful place. There are other animals coming and going, and it's full of really crazy smells and weird noises and all of this stuff they're not used to. Now, I'm not saying a dog who can settle well is totally immune to stress, but what they do possess is a far greater capacity to regulate themselves. They can say, well, they can't say it, that would be amazing, but they can kind of think, I don't need to be on high alert right now. And that makes the whole experience ultimately less traumatic for them and for you as well, of course. But it's not just about your convenience at the end of the day. There's an emotional well-being angle here too, because dogs who don't know how to settle are often the ones who live in a state of hyperarousal. Their nervous system is just always switched on, like they're running on adrenaline 24/7. And you and I both know that if a human being lived like that, that is not sustainable. I mean, we would call it burnout, right? So for our dogs, it's really useful for us to actually see settle training for what it is and the inherent value it has in teaching not just the physical behavior, but also teaching the body and the brain how to come down from that high gear and just allow themselves to recharge. So, when we look at the bigger picture, settle training is part of what I would just call lifestyle skills generally. And these are the things that make our dogs just generally easier to live with, easier to take places, and just more adaptable. It's the kind of skill that doesn't always get shown off on Instagram, right? Because it's really boring, but it's actually huge when it comes to making everyday life for all of us a whole lot smoother. And most importantly, it gives your dog the chance to feel safe and content, even in challenging situations. And for our reactive dogs in particular, growing the skill of being able to settle is absolutely vital, because a dog who is already keyed up, they're barking at the window, they're reacting to every sound outside, that dog is going to find it nearly impossible to switch off when you take them out there into that world. And that's where training like my 21-day engagement training program or my reactivity pack comes in, because engagement lays the foundation for connection. It teaches our dogs to disengage from that environment and to choose us and our instructions and our guidance instead. And likewise, reactivity training builds the emotional safety that so many of our dogs don't have today, that says, actually, you're used to thinking that the world is full of threat or full of risks that require your constant monitoring to keep the situation safe, when actually it's not. And you can find far more reward and fulfillment in downgrading your vigilance than staying in that constant state of hypervigilance. And once those pieces are in place, settling calmly, easily, and intuitively suddenly becomes so possible for your dog. So let's think about what's actually happening when a dog settles. As I've said before, and I'm sure you're fully grasping by this point, it's not as simple as them just laying down. Settling properly requires a few underlying skills, right? So, first, there's emotional regulation, because a dog who is wound up like a coiled spring doesn't just flip into calmness. They need to learn how to downshift their arousal. And this is something that develops over time with practice and with maturity as well, to some extent. Then there's the comfort with just doing nothing, right? This one is huge, especially with your more active breeds like your collies, spaniels, shepherds, malinois, all these dogs who were bred to be alert, to be responsive, and constantly working. Doing nothing does not come naturally to these guys. 9 times out of 10, it has to be taught. Okay. And then there's impulse control. Being able to stay relaxed while the world goes on around them, that takes some self control. A dog who can just stay snoozing even when a skateboard rolls past outside the cafe, or another dog walks in, or two children just run past the table noisily, that dog has learned that the world doesn't always require their attention or any action on their part. And finally, there's a sense of security in the environment, because ultimately, if your dog does not feel safe, they won't relax, full stop, no matter how much training you've done. I mean, would you take a nap in a room full of snakes? I highly doubt it. So, settling is as much about the emotional backdrop as it is about teaching the behavior itself. Okay, let's go a bit sciencey for a moment, because I think understanding what's happening in the brain makes this whole concept clearer. So, when your dog is restless, they are alert, they are scanning the room, That's their sympathetic nervous system working. That's the fight or flight branch, if you like. Cortisol and adrenaline are on board. Their body is essentially prepared to respond to any situation that could come up that is potentially threatening. When your dog settles, something different kicks in. That's the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest branch, right? This is the system that slows the heart rate. It allows digestion and it signals that the environment is safe. And settle training is really about strengthening this system and teaching your dog how to activate it. And here's something to bear in mind: the more often your dog practices settling, properly settling, the easier it becomes for them because neural pathways get strengthened. It's literally like building a muscle at the gym, or the same way some of us might practice meditation or breathing exercises or whatever to calm ourselves down. Dogs can practice effective settling to regulate their nervous system, and it's literally brain training. Now, hopefully, it goes without saying that we need to talk a little bit more about breed variation for a second, because, of course, we can't ignore breed tendencies with this one, as I've kind of already alluded to. A greyhound, for example, is practically designed for settling. They will happily curl up and nap for most of the day. They are very chill. Whereas a young working line collie, on the other hand, they're gonna struggle because settling and switching off does not come naturally to dogs who were bred to scan sheep and respond to movement all day long. Now, that doesn't mean those dogs can't learn to settle. It just means that you, as their owner, you will need to work a bit harder at creating those opportunities for calm. Think of it like this, okay? Some people are naturally laid back. I'm sure you know some people like this in your life. And you have other people who are naturally really fizzy, high energy people. Both of those types of people can learn yoga. Of course they can. But one group finds it easier than the other group. So if your dog struggles to settle, don't see it as a failure. See it as training a skill that may not be innate for them, but it will benefit them enormously once they've learned it. So, how do we actually train this skill? Okay, let me just walk you through the process in a way that feels natural and easy. So, first of all, I would start by creating a dedicated settle spot. Now, this might be a mat or a dog bed or a rug or whatever it is. Think of it as your dog's relaxation zone. Okay, now, first of all, I'd bring out the mat and I would reward any interaction at all with that mat, sniffing it, stepping on it, laying down on it, whatever. At this point, I just want the dog to think this mat is where good things happen. That's it. And then from there, I would pay attention and begin to notice and capture little moments of calmness. So if the dog lays down, if they give one of those big sighs, or they just look a little bit softer in the body, or they do that weight shift. You know, when you're teaching your dog to go into like a down stay, and you'll have them hold their body like really tightly and symmetrically, and then you see the weight shift over onto one hip when they've just softened and they've just released and they've just let go a bit. I would mark and reward that. Ultimately, the more we reinforce calm, the more it grows. And over time, I would start asking for longer stretches of relaxation. Although, be wary of jumping into this too quickly, because the goal isn't to pin the dog to the mat. It's just to teach them that relaxation itself is rewarding. And as they get the idea, I'd add some small challenges, right? Maybe I'll just walk past them. Maybe I'll just go and move a chair, just random little things. If the dog stays relaxed, they get rewarded. If not, I would lower the difficulty. And we simply build it up like this, really gradually, like stacking blocks, one on top of the other. Eventually, you can start taking the mat to new places, like a really quiet cafe or a training class or a friend's house, whatever it is. The mat becomes a portable relaxation cue. And then later, once the behavior is really solid, like really solid, you can actually fade the mat, and just the settle cue itself carries the same meaning. But just to stress this point, right? Settle training is not about forcing the dog into a down and making them stay there, because that will create tension, which is literally the opposite of relaxation. True settling comes from choice. It comes from the dog simply learning that calmness feels good, and Brucey bonus, it pays well. Now, it's probably also worth talking about the way we deliver rewards during this stage as well. Because if every treat that we're using during training is like tossed at your dog with excitement, or delivered with really high energy praise, or you spend the entirety of each session just like hovering and staring at your dog, waiting for them to do something, then it kind of goes without saying, the dog can actually get a little amped up by the process, and you're not really achieving the thing you've set out to achieve, because they're not really learning to relax. They're just waiting for the next burst of reward. We really want the treats to support relaxation, not just replace the original state of vigilance with a different kind of arousal. So, how the heck do we do that? Well, first of all, keep your reward delivery calm and fairly predictable. So place the treat really gently on the mat between their paws, rather than like tossing it or giving it with lots of fanfare. Use really quiet, low key praise or just total silence, instead of enthusiastically squealing at your dog, like, yeah, well done, here you go. You can also space out the rewards. So make sure you are truly waiting for those magic moments when your dog just gives that big sigh, or like they really soften, or they just shift into that deeper state of calm before you reinforce them. And over time, you can transition to using less food generally and more reinforcement simply from the environment itself, like just calmly stroking them, or just the fact that you are there, that you are present with them, and you can enjoy this social downtime together. And this way, we can do our best to make sure that the food we are using acts as a bridge to relaxation, rather than as this constant stimulant, if you like, that just keeps your dog buzzing through the whole session. Okay, so that's a whole load of why to do it, how to do it. But what if you're sat there thinking, this isn't going to work for me? I've tried it, it doesn't work, it's not happening. Okay, let's have a quick troubleshoot together. So, what if your dog just won't settle? First of all, the solution really does not have to be an overcomplicated one. So, I implore you to check the basics first. Are they hungry? Are they thirsty? Do they need the toilet? Are they under exercised? A dog with unmet needs ultimately won't relax. And honestly, if I could give you only one single piece of advice with all of this, it would be, please don't get up in the morning, set settle training as your goal for today, and then think that your dog is likely to have a successful first session if you haven't even exercised them yet, especially if you have a high energy or a working breed, because that would literally be bonkers. Okay. Second, check the environment. Did you pick a space that is just too stimulating for their current level of training? If so, take it down a notch. Third, check your expectations. Dogs simply cannot go from zero to hero in one session. It's not going to happen. If your collie puppy is bouncing off the walls, you expecting them to lie calmly at a pub straight away is setting both of you up to fail. So please, instead of that, set yourself some little mini goals, build it up gradually, put the work in step by step, one block on top of the other. And again, this is where If you are struggling, I would like to shamelessly plug and recommend you explore something like my 21-day engagement training course, because I've said it before and I'll say it again. I'll say it till I'm blue in the face. I'm having it written on my gravestone. Engagement is the foundation for everything, including a settle. It's about building a dog who chooses to connect with you, who feels safe with you, and who trusts you enough to relax in your presence. And once you've built that engagement, settle training becomes so much smoother. And for those of you with reactive dogs, the reactivity pack, which I've mentioned before, truly can be an invaluable resource and piece of the puzzle. It literally gives you the step-by-step skills to help your dog regulate around their triggers. Because without those skills, settle training is always going to be pretty much impossible in certain scenarios, right? Because your dog's nervous system is going to be simply too heightened to do it. And don't forget all the digital courses and programs and training packs and planners on my website, listendogtraining.com. They are all available to you guys with an extra 10% off with the code podcast10. Okay, so to wrap this up, settle training matters because ultimately it helps our dogs regulate emotionally. It is not just about obedience, it is about their well-being as well. And it makes everyday life so much easier and more enjoyable for both dogs and humans alike. It does require certain underlying skills, but those can absolutely be developed with a little bit of effort and consistency on your part. And the training process, while it comes off as pretty basic on the surface, it really is deeply transformative when it is done patiently and positively. And if you take only one thing from today, let it be this: settle training isn't a trick. It truly is a life skill, and it's a really valuable one. It's one of the greatest gifts you can give your dog because it teaches them how to feel safe in their own body, no matter what's going on around them. And then you get to reap the rewards of that just as much as they do, right? So if you want to dive deeper, do check out my 21-day engagement training or the reactivity pack. Both are available on my website, listendogtraining.com. Both are designed to give you the tools that make settle training not just possible, but ultimately successful. And I'll love and leave you now because I think I've talked for long enough, but definitely let's do this again, same time next week, with another gorgeous dog walk and another episode of The Walk and Talk.